Oh, there we go. Oh, welcome to the programme. Slightly early, but you know.
Nothing kicks off early in Rugby League.
Well, I know everything usually kicks off late, or doesn't kick off at all, as tends to be the case these days. But Phil, I should start by saying congratulations to you and Tony and Rose on 10 years of 4020 magazine, which is out now in shops, and it's got a quote on the side which I discovered at I think 11 o'clock on Saturday night. Did you think you'd make it to 10 years? Since Rugby League was supposed to be dead by then.
Probably not. I don't think we ever set out with that goal in mind. We set out on a monthly basis to produce a product, and it just so happens that 120 of those months seem to have gone by, and that makes 10 years. And no, we're proud to have kept it going, particularly as when we had the first lockdown, it would have probably been easier to stop.
It would have been easier to write a column about TV on Rugby League without any
Rugby League.
Yeah.
But no, we're very proud of it. We've had some columnists with us right from the beginning. Mr. McCarthy Scarsbrook, who it's lovely in the 10th anniversary she gets to celebrate his great ambition of winning at Wembley, and spent a lot of time taking the expletives out. And Mr. Noble of the Brian Variety, who again has seen a number of roles in that time, one of which at the moment is trying to, in part, come up with a plan to save the game. So yeah, we're hopefully reporting on our third World Cup.
Wow. Fingers crossed.
The stories that have had resonance are those where Rugby League is being played in areas perhaps where you wouldn't expect it, be that the women's game, the south of England, European or worldwide countries that are taken to the sport. We've always tried to promote that, and yeah, we're honoured that people still buy it.
Great news is for people watching on YouTube, lovely graphics and everything. People watching on Facebook on my mobile, I'm just about out of shot, which is fantastic. But you can see the balloons and the table, which is the most important thing. Up sausage, says Shane. Hi Shane. We should say hello to Graham, I think it was, who we saw at the services a week or so back at Leicester Forest. Stopped us and said he enjoys watching the programme. So Graham, if I've got your name wrong, I apologise. But thank you. And thank you to everyone who comments every week on YouTube. Plenty of you do. And it's nice for you to interact with us even after the programme has finished. As Liam pointed out, when you said it was Superman pointing on that meme, we meant Spider-Man.
Did we?
We meant Spider-Man.
You see, I'm of an age. He can probably tell.
It is great, Graham. It is Graham. Hello, Graham. Thanks for giving me 3 minutes of your time on Saturday in the services. That could be misconstrued. That's a different kind of thing. But I mean, what a week we've had. We didn't do a show last week on Monday, but then we did one on Tuesday, reflecting on the Challenge Cup final, and then we got Danny Ward lined up. And then on the day Danny Ward came on the programme, the World Cup was thrown into jeopardy by the evil Australians and their puppets from New Zealand. Can I call them puppets?
Yes, absolutely. So, I think that when the wash settles, that will be exactly how it should be seen.
And we still don't know what's going to happen with it, because whether the Australians or the New Zealanders don't come, I think as we said last Thursday, the World Cup has to happen. I know everyone can say, we've got to delay it for a year, this, that and the other.
Well, I think the options are narrowing, so it won't be delayed till next year. One of the reasons it won't be delayed is because the congestion of sporting fixtures, bearing in mind that the Football Premiership will be starting earlier next year to accommodate their World Cup, and there's the Commonwealth Games, there isn't the same slot next year. So that affects your ability to be broadcast in every game of all 3 tournaments at the moment. All 61 matches are scheduled to be on the BBC. That space isn't there next year. The government have clearly invested heavily in the World Cup as part of its programme of showing that the country is opening up. They won't be so keen to finance that next year. So I think that's 2 very good reasons why it won't be postponed to next year. 2023 can't really take place because it's the Rugby Union World Cup in France. And then if you delay it any further than that, you might as well have the 2025 version. But I think there's a real willingness at the moment for the World Cup to go ahead. There are contingencies in hand if Australia and New Zealand can't be resolved and come over, and it seems to be there's splits over there at the moment about what's the real reason why you don't want players to come. It clearly isn't the reason you've given us, which has nothing to do with COVID. And the more that gets exposed, the more either enough players will say we want to play, or people will turn around and say we now had our doubts reassured and we will come and play. So I suspect there is travel. We do know that there's another board meeting of the Rugby League World Cup executive on Wednesday. They hope to have some clarifications towards the end of this week about what may happen. There are teams, nations, I think, that have been approached if they need to be in it. There are this continuing talk that's gaining traction over there of the Indigenous Australian and the Maori New Zealand perhaps coming over, and indications are certainly from some Indigenous players of a very high profile that they wouldn't necessarily take as a blanket ban the NRL saying that they weren't allowed, or the RLC saying they weren't allowed to come, because it's an individual's decision, and they're not stopping a team from coming over because they don't control that team. And from what we know about the desire to be controlled, like us in the north of England in 1895, I think the first people of both nations feel that they should be allowed to exercise their own rights.
I mean, as we know, all those who've been vaccinated and double vaccinated are being controlled now by Bill Gates.
Yes.
So, hello, Bill.
So I think there's still a lot of lobbying going on. I think the fact that the Australians themselves are making a huge deal about their successes at the Olympics just shows that there is a sort of resonance with international sport that Rugby League would absolutely miss out on when virtually every other Australian sport is taking part. So yeah, there's some climbing down to do from certain egos, but in terms of perhaps there still being a viable World Cup, yes, it's still in the realms of it's going to happen as scheduled.
I don't think anyone would blame any individuals who didn't want to come over because of the COVID or anything.
100%.
But everyone knows, even though they can't say it, that's not the reason Australia don't want to come, or Australia don't want to come over. Forget New Zealand for a minute. Although, as we know, because Jacob Rees-Mogg knows everything about Rugby League, big fan of Broughton Rangers, he knows that they are scared of losing to England, of course. Australia being the 1 to 100 favourites to win the men's and women's competitions. They're scared of the wheelchair, English and French. So,
I think it's safe to say that there will always be an international competition in any sport where certain top-line players are not available. Be that injury, be that loss of form, be that strange selections by coaches. So there will always be some top-line players who do not come. And that's not what we should be worried about, because we're looking for squads of 25. I think the stumbling block at the moment, and the one that the World Cup organisers will be working the hardest on between now and whenever they next make an announcement, are the other Pacific nations, because clearly they are reliant on players who play in the NRL for their top line players, much more than an Australia or New Zealand would be, much more than an Indigenous team would be, or a Maori team. But it seems, and I said we're on the outside, we're not in the inner sanctum of these meetings as they take place, but at the moment the Asia Pacific group are solid about coming over and supporting the World Cup. And I think, again, they all have domestic competitions. So whilst it will be lovely that Jason Taumalolo comes and plays for Tonga, if he chooses not to, if he feels pressure put on him that he shouldn't, and it does give somebody who is playing the game on the island of Tonga the chance to be part of a World Cup, well, in many ways, that's what a World Cup's about as well. So.
And the real David Fafita, he's Tongan. Well, I assume he is because his brother is. So.
Well, and that is the other thing. There are players already here who clearly are, aware of the COVID situation, who could play for those nations, and ones who, Ata Hingano, who has just come over and signed for Salford, he's Tongan, he played in the last World Cup, but he'd been playing for Mackay Cutters. It's possible he may not have been selected if everyone is available. He may well get the chance to play in his second World Cup, which King Vuni Ayawa played once for Fiji. He's here. He could well be part of the Fiji squad. So I'm not as overtly pessimistic as some, and I do think, as tweeted today, there's a huge irony when Roger Tuivasa-Sheck calls an end to his rugby league career and moves into rugby union, that the New Zealand Rugby League, who desperately need an international presence to counter the All Blacks and in their own country, have announced that they're not going to send a team to the World Cup at the time that their star man and captain, who was also eligible for Samoa and could have ended his rugby league career in a World Cup, couldn't, playing for New Zealand because his own governing body said, we don't want you to play.
Strange to think how the world has changed 18 months ago when we were all excited about Sonny Bill Williams playing for Toronto. They could play for Samoa in this World Cup against England in the opening game, and how the world has changed in 18 months. The World Cup story will rumble on and on.
It won't be resolved quickly.
No. I think we're fairly positive that the World Cup will happen because it has to happen.
Yes. I think as well, a World Cup isn't just about the nations that win it.
No.
It's about the cultural programmes that come with it, the exposure of people to international sport. I also think that if you were to take out, let's assume at the moment that there is no Australia or New Zealand presence. Let's assume for a minute that includes Indigenous and Maori, and that other nations are brought in. The likelihood is it will be a closer competition. It actually, might even in terms of results and excitement be to the benefit of the tournament that the two of the favourite nations are not there. So we'll wait and see. And this is rugby league, so anything could happen. I think Mr. Valandis has backed himself into a bit of a corner though, which will be very interesting to see how he gets out of that. Bearing in mind that most of the time the decisions he's made have been seen to be the correct ones.
We will see what happens. No doubt there'll be lots of excitement. You've got to listen to John Davison's interview on By the Balls because he's seen documents.
Well, the biosecurity document is 100 pages long. So, to say that their concerns have not been considered, again, clearly that is not the issue. Even our good friend Gary Carter in The Sun today has given details of the lengths to which players will be expected to adhere to the protocols that are in place. They were set up specifically for the Indian cricket team, who, as far as we know, have suffered no ill effect from being over here and playing under those conditions.
And as we saw with that tour, I think the only player who was told off was Josh Ratchett, who went home to check something else. I mean, then he got thrown out of the squad because you can't break the bubble. So.
No, so was the gas on? Can't play.
Go watch telly instead. No.
So yeah, I think both sides are now actually trying to tread cautiously, not to further inflame the situation, in the knowledge that someone is going to have to back down, but within the realms of not being seen to back down.
And money is placed available to give all the players in the NRL who are coming over the very best possible journey here and back, and their quarantine in Australia.
Well, I think
they're not going to be left in some derelict Premier Inn or something.
The whole of the quarantine issue is based on the Olympians that are coming back. That they would set up a bespoke area in Homebush, which would have access to training and gym facilities. They'd build a mall so that there could be pop-up shops in it. So it's not that they have to stay indoors for 2 weeks. And the clubs who are concerned about their players not being fit to come back for pre-season by 2 weeks, which is a joke, they would be able to train, and they'd be able to train as a group. So they're not going to lose the ability to do some fitness work for the new season.
I think the more people learn about the lengths the World Cup are going to accommodate our friends from the NRL, the more that the war on them will swing to the side.
And I also think the more players that come out and say, I mean, I thought Wayne Bennett, if our listeners and viewers haven't seen it, gave a really impassioned fight. Wayne Bennett impassioned. I mean, that's enough. But it was, I think, a 5-minute speech about the importance of international competition, why he supports it, why he would encourage all his players to be part of it. The more people that do that, then the more there is a groundswell towards, if they're going and they're going to have this great experience of playing in the World Cup, then I'm not going to miss out on it
The World Cup, it's coming. They can't stop it. It's going to be on the telly and everything, and there'll be more of it on TV than the Olympics because, as people have now discovered over the past weekend, because the International Olympic Committee, of course, higher, faster, stronger, more cash, have sold the rights to Discovery, which is great if you've got Eurosport and Discovery Plus. You can watch everything, but you can't watch it on the BBC. They've only got 2 streams, and they keep showing gymnastics. From interesting gymnastics. Where's the beach volleyball? I've got to be on brand.
I also think it's safe to say that if other nations are lined up, then there's going to be some real big excitement in those nations that actually could counter the fact that, you know, maybe Australia and New Zealand are here. To the outside world, I think the figure is that 70% of the tickets bought so far are not in traditional rugby league areas. So if you're going to watch, let's say, America as a nation playing in a World Cup, as opposed to New Zealand as a nation, there is still a certain... The people of Coventry, let's say, who wouldn't get to see Australia against Scotland, but might get to see, let's just say, America against Scotland. There's still some cachet in that, depending on how it's marketed and built up and who's playing for the respective... But it would be a closer game as well.
I'll go back to what I said last week about individual names. No one knows who any of them are. No one in this country knows who James Tedesco is.
Who could play for Italy.
You know, it goes back to the Greg English side. It was big in rugby league, but it wasn't big in a wider world because people didn't know him in the way they knew Sonny Bill Williams. That's not the fault of the individuals. That's our fault as a sport. But
I'd find out just how fit Sonny Bill was at the moment, and bearing in mind that he hasn't played contact sport for a while, he might actually be in really good shape. I know he's still doing a bit of the boxing, but if I was Samoa, I'd be seriously thinking about bringing him over. And if I were the World Cup organisers, I'd be seriously asking them to think about bringing him over, because then it suddenly becomes a more saleable tournament.
is he still coaching them? And the Johns brothers?
Well, they've offered, but I suspect that wasn't taken.
It's like Wakefield 2000 all over again. The Johns brothers, John Olonu.
I thought you meant the World Cup we might
No,
go into.
then we end up with, I was going to say Paul Sampson. That's a bit unfair on him, isn't it? But yeah.
But there's a lot of lobbying going on in a lot of places for it to continue. There's a willingness, and I think as well as we shouldn't forget that the ARLC, NZRL have made it almost exclusively about the men's game. There's been very little definitive talk about whether that affects the women's teams and certainly the wheelchair team. And New Zealand, we're still talking about their PDRL team and them coming over. Well, with again, the greatest respect. If you're talking about a group of vulnerable people prepared to come over into a COVID situation, it's the PDR. If they're coming from New Zealand in an almost an add-on to the World Cup, but clearly under the umbrella of the World Cup, then it looks ridiculous that your main able-bodied athletes don't come as well. So I still think there is some possibility of it going ahead as planned. But I think there are nations in both men's, women's and wheelchair that are being told if the opportunity becomes available and they are willing to take that.
Fiji women will be straight over here.
Well, they'd be well.
Someone should ask Ali Brigginshaw what she thinks. Because she probably swear.
She thinks the women's game's effing great.
She did.
Except she didn't say any Yorkshire.
No. She's from Yorkshire. Can we claim that Queensland is part of Yorkshire and they won the origin, so Yorkshire won the state of origin? Yeah, because that's how it works. They're giving the gold medal to Yorkshire in that league. I mean, I'm sure all our viewers from outside of Yorkshire are thinking, "Oh, it's them. They're at it again." No, I'm fully in agreement with you. We can't claim a gold medal that we won half of. You can't do that. Tom Daly's not from Yorkshire, but he's famous. And we don't have any famous people in rugby league, as we've discussed many a time. In-depth analysis in the TV column this month on the captaincy of a question of sport. This is the kind of in-depth analysis you expect from
a lot of research gone into that.
The Rugby League Journal of Record. That's the phrase you use, isn't it?
It says, I think.
Yeah.
But I couldn't be bothered to find out.
It's on Wikipedia. And Jonathan Davis, Welsh is his first language, not English. So when I did that joke about Neil Ruddock, and I like Neil Ruddock, but he's an easy target. You've got to punch down, haven't you, sometimes? But Tom Daly's famous, and he was famous before he won a gold medal at the Olympics with some other fella. But there's no one famous in Rugby League. We need to make celebrities. And I've been watching the 100 this week because it's been incessantly promoted on Sky and the BBC. More so than, I think, goes beyond the realms of we've got some sport on. It's been a bit propaganda on the BBC social media page. Well, everything's great. This is the greatest thing ever. Blah, blah, blah. It's the biggest crowd ever. Yeah, but it's bigger than the one yesterday and this and that and the other. Although I think they should have done, you say they should have mixed teams, I think they should have mixed the competition up and just had one league table. Because then the Northern Superchargers would be better than they are, because the men lost, didn't they? But the women have won 2. You know, so. But there's got to be some lessons we can learn from the 100, because if you haven't watched it, and there was lots of discussion before it even started, that it's terrible, it's not proper cricket. And basically what's happened is it's T20 cricket with 20 less balls. A few more gimmicks added. Don't like the graphics on the screen. Don't like some of the hype from the commentators, because it goes beyond actual commentating into propaganda. But in essence, it's cricket. T20 cricket's been around for 20 years. It's just another rebrand of that where they can try and make some money because no one cares about Derbyshire versus Gloucestershire or something. I don't know. But they're making names out of these people, especially the women cricketers who people might not have heard of before because they're on national television. They've got DJs and music and people off the telly being Burks and stuff, and they're selling an event and not saying it's cricket, come and watch. Whereas, and I think we can look at the attendances this week and we can make many assumptions as to why the crowds are as they are. I know people have made various statements about Wigan's crowd. 5,555. You couldn't make that up, could you? What a number that is.
What a poker hand that is.
That's almost like the 10,000 you used to get at Leicester Tigers every week. Exactly. We expect people to turn up just because it's Rugby League, don't we? We don't add any value whatsoever. And I've said this before. It's unfair this week because Wigan, Leeds and Huddersfield play in vaguely modern stadia, but in a week where we'd have, Wakefield and Castleford at home, or okay, I've done work to their ground, but it's still an old ground. Well, no, just use Wakefield and Castleford as examples. Or in the Championship. You're expecting people to pay 25, 30 quid, plus everything else on top of it, to stand in terrible facilities with Victorian toilets, and then we wonder, where's everyone gone?
And basically just watch the 80 minutes rather than feel. I know clubs work really hard on, pre-match entertainment, but I think, and again, I've not seen anything really of the 100 other than the news that surrounded it. It's clearly aiming for a next generation audience. So purists will be upset by it and won't see the point of it, and there may be some merit in a lot of people who are cricket followers saying, why didn't you just hype up the T20? Because basically, which is fine, but I think your point is the valid one. There's a tradition around the names that are involved in the T20 that you don't get by almost reinventing yourself. Now, I don't understand how some players can play for Yorkshire one week and somebody called, Welsh Fire, the next week. So I get that it's sort of that halfway house between the IPL and the Big Bash, and we're testing the waters, and some of the big foreign overseas names that we wanted to come haven't been able to. Hasn't stopped the 100 going ahead.
No,
going back to our talk
there
about
are some
the World
Australians
Cup.
there. I've seen
They did, but they didn't say, because some players can't now come, we better cancel the competition. They've gone ahead with it. And it seems to be that numbers are turning up. So whether the fogies like me like or don't like it is irrelevant. If they can get 13,000 people to go and watch a women's cricket match that takes 3 hours to actually get through the cricket part of it, but has all the bells, whistles, and younger people who may have a shorter attention span, which again is a generalisation, but that's why they're coming up with these short forms. Gives us two issues, I think. One is, how do we get a product that appeals to a more modern day audience in its traditional format? Because clearly when that is a real worry, that Wigan crowd. Forget the day of the week it was played. that is no interest other than season
and
ticket
forget the
holders.
opposition as well, because again we're going back to this argument of they don't bring
Yeah.
away fans. Irrelevant. You should never budget on how many away fans are coming. You should be filling the stadium with your own people.
Absolutely. So that's a concern, because I think firstly a lot of people thought. John Keir used the analogy when World War II finished. We had the highest attendance ever because everybody couldn't wait. Well, that's clearly not happening, and I don't think it's going to happen between now and the end of the season. Not least with more and more games being called off, because you're not going to commit to something that you don't know it's necessarily going to happen. And we already know that 2, probably 3 games are off from the first batch of fixtures, and we've all said the actual schedule of fixtures is ridiculous and mitigates against people knowing where the competition is. So I think you need to look at your major competition and who it appeals to, but you have to have other variants. And again, we sort of invented nines, and I get that irony, Rugby League, irony. Who'd have thought? At the same time as the IRL, who are in charge of promoting the World Cup, are saying we'd like to get nines in the Brisbane Olympics of 2032 as an exhibition event, and they're looking at, we need a different format, we need a different stage to play it on, we need to raise the profile, just as you said. Australia and New Zealand say, well, we're not coming to the World Cup, and they if there was a balloon here that said Brisbane 2032, we would have just stuck a pin in it. And that's where you have to have a concerted plan and say, what do you want the sport to look like? And again, within the pages of the extra pages of this very article of reading here, the Richardson plan, which is again another attempt to take us into a different area. And as he says, it's not all nailed on. It's a concept to get people talking, but it's what do we want to look like. And you compare that to Ken Davey, who's quoted in the other half of the article, basically saying we're looking to go back to what we were, or realignment with the best of each. Well, what about if the best of each now actually needs something different rather than the bits that we've seen? And again, I think that's where the sport is at the moment. That we have to decide. We're going to continue with the fixtures as we're seeing them and the teams as we know them in a competition that we have had for many a long year with just minor adjustments, or are we actually going to say we need to be different coming out of COVID, and we need to look different, we need to have another variant, we need to have appeal to a younger audience, and not, as you say, just put on the same fixtures every week and expect the same sort of people to turn up and watch them when the numbers are diminishing, whether we like it or not.
As we've seen with the Rugby Union Sevens, we'll give it its full title, which it doesn't have in the Olympics. There aren't famous people in there. Not that I know any Rugby Union players anymore, as we've discussed before, but they're not the top level international Lions Tour Six Nations people. Those are not those people, especially Sevens players. We had the Carnegie Nines 10 years ago or so. There is an opportunity there where, and again, we're just coming up with these things and just throwing them against the wall because, let's face it, it's better than,
We have to at the moment.
We could write a plan, but it'll get thrown in the bin anyway. So we may as well just throw ideas out there on a podcast and people go, it's a load of crap or it's good. So we have a Super League, Championship, League One, whatever. Women's Super League is there as well. That's on a weekend. Midweek, we have a series of nines tournaments, much like they did with the sevens in the. Brilliantly, I've got some programs from the late 60s where they had sevens tournaments which they ran in the winter. What a stupid idea that is! But instead of having Wakefield and whoever, you would still have Leeds, you would still have Wigan, but you would then have a Calder representative. The whole are together. Sorry, Cumbria, whatever. Greater Manchester.
Cumbria, who I think one year won the Carnegie Knights.
So we have these hybrid teams, but you don't put the star players in there because it doesn't matter because we're not there to see.
Well, I think we may have said on our podcast late last week, just before the S hit the F, that in my opinion we should have redrawn the remaining fixtures in Super League. That we should have said how many games does Sky need, which fixtures do the clubs need to get maximum value, and if that means Wigan play in the league both at Wigan and at Leigh, because each club can generate revenue from that. You know, if I don't know, Hull play Hull KR two, 3 more times this season, then we need to do whatever we can to maintain some financial and economic element to keep these clubs going. I'm thinking now about Magic Weekend. Clearly that is still on for the beginning of September. Clearly people have bought tickets, the venue is booked. The danger would be if, like this week, in the run-up to Magic Weekend, where you have to have all the teams there, that we have 2 or 3 of the fixtures that can't take place because of COVID, that we suddenly decide, even though we don't have bubbles, that it's really dangerous to put teams together who, post-Magic, 4 or 5 or 6 teams then suddenly can't play the fixture after that. That a lot of squads are really suffering in terms of the numbers they've got at training, because they either have people who are injured because of the volume of matches we're asking them to play, or the recovery from COVID is an issue that we haven't got our heads around either. I would now make the decision that Magic Weekend is a 9s tournament. That all of the clubs would then have less pressure on them to produce a full squad of 17 at a time where some are only naming 15 or whatever they can. I think you've got the opportunity in a 9s tournament to play some of your younger academy kids as well on a big stage. We probably have a silver salver left over in whatever cupboard it was taken from.
Might be odds
put in a storage unit somewhere. But actually just say, look, for this season, and let's see how it goes, there'll be an extra trophy. And let's say your boys at Wakefield won the Super League 9s that was played over a weekend, and we could come up with a format where every team plays 3 times over the weekend. So if you're a fan, you get to see your team play Saturday and Sunday, so there's actually an encouragement maybe to stay for both games, make a weekend.
Which is good for the hosts.
Which is great for the hosts, good for the city. We probably haven't got time to build too much around it in terms of it would be great to have music, but I think there's enough that we could do to now say let's still have Magic, but this year as a trial, and we may do it in future years, and it may be the start of perhaps getting 9s. A regular circuit. The Aussies still seem to start their season with a 9s tournament. I'm assuming they're still going to. We have something similar here. You're talking about then building a qualifying perhaps into 2032 when you want to have it as an exhibition sport, and you might have 9s this year amongst the Super League teams, but next year you might have it as an international event and start inviting the likes of Jamaica and Serbia and teams where perhaps national teams where perhaps there's going to be then a payback and a legacy to those nations.
So we're throwing everything against the wall here. So here's the idea then. So we've expanded it now. This 9s thing that I've come up with, where you've got the merged teams and the big teams, but you're also going to have the international teams in as well.
Yep.
Because going back to the British Coal 9s of the late 80s, which was run twice, they had Papua New Guinea involved. I think Auckland were there one year because they were on tour. But you can have the Jamaica, because you can have a domestic Jamaica side in there. You've got the Wakefield combined with Castleford, and it's mainly academy players. It gives them a chance to play, stick a couple of first teamers in there, fringe first teamers. The squads are picked at the start of the tournament by a club legend or someone who's associated with the area. So we'll give Scully the job at Leeds, and he can pick the team, and he's in charge and visiting
himself
and all that.
Just give me the ball.
Exactly. So it's different. It's related to the clubs, but it's also different enough that it can have a different audience. You can play it at the likes of Fev or wherever. It's a nice ground where people can go to and watch. And then you have a big finals day or whatever.
Well, this comes back to your idea about the 100, because whether
that's what I'm ripping off you.
Whether we like it or not, and whether cricket aficionados like it or not, it's having an impact. And again, as part of a 9s tournament, you could even have a women's 9s tournament.
Well, exactly, and this is where you have it combined, so the points are all combined, men against women.
And the thing about that then is that you've got maybe 6 opportunities to see your team, because you can see the team in as women and as men. And as you follow the fortunes of Wakefield, Castleford, and Featherstone women. Combined, they've got a really competitive team. Individually, 1 or 2 of those may be struggling at the moment. So I think this is what we need to be looking at, but we haven't got a lot of time because apparently it's the 26th of July. I've just checked. And I just think those sort of decisions, Sky have got a whole bunch of time allocated to Rugby League over 2 days. and we're not giving them, we're not denying them the ability to have rugby league front and centre. What we're doing is, if we're clever enough, we're going to them and saying, "I'll alter that product for you. We've actually got something that, and we don't want to run the risk of not taking place. We don't want to be ringing you on a Monday and saying, you know, we had 6 fixtures, we've only got 2 now. What we've come up with is something that actually suits everybody, and you can do with the Super League 9s what you've done with the 100 of. Clearly it won't be the same level of promotion, but you can start telling people it's something a little bit different.
And we rip off the snooker where they have that shootout thing, and it's just 10 minutes.
Oh,
and
it's
it.
If you're going to have men and women, you're going to have lots of games. You have to reduce the amount of. So, but from what I can remember of seeing 9s played, it's got a defensive element, it's got an attacking element, it's relatively low scoring. It might even be that one try wins it.
And if it's a draw...
And it don't come much more shootout than that.
If it's a draw, penalties. Actual penalties. That's what we want. And the other thing that I've forgotten, which we will have in it... let's think, we'll have a countdown clock from 10, we'll have men's and women's tournaments going on at once, we'll have entertainment, we'll have food, we'll have international teams. And it won't happen, because I've just made it up. But I've invented it now. We'll give it a wacky name. And this is the thing where it's all right as going to the Hearns and whatever, but the Hearns do individual sports and haven't been able to, as of yet.
But what you might do with something like that is ring up the Hearns and say, this is the event, we'll pay you a percentage of any people that get there above 20,000. Will you promote it? You don't own it, but you are essentially promoters. You like to promote your own product, but if we pay you an incentive-based fee to get people there, would you like to put your toe in the water with Rugby League?
Leeds Rhinos of the Betfred Super League, have they sent out a tweet congratulating the Betfred World Match Play Darts champion Peter Wright, who's there as a fan?
They did mention him, I think, during the week, but they certainly have congratulated anybody from Leeds who's won a gold medal today.
Because he's a Leeds fan. And
he had a shirt
with the sponsors,
shirt hung up, didn't he, in his shed where he practiced.
There was something else I was going to mention about this tournament that I've invented, and I can't remember what it was. But I'm sure it was important.
I think your tournament idea is a great idea. I just think we now have a slot at Magic.
We've got to do something, yeah, because we got lucky with Wembley. We got very lucky with Wembley. We said that last week.
Well, look at the fact that neither Saints or Cass have played since Wembley.
Yeah.
And they're not going to play again this week.
And the 1895 was in doubt until 3 hours before it kicked off.
The morning of it, yeah. So I don't know what our good people think that...
We're talking rubbish.
No, that would they go and... Let's say you bought a ticket to Magic, you think you're going to see a standard league fixture in a league that is having its integrity questioned by the minute. If somebody said to you, your ticket is still valid, we still want you to come, but you're going to see something a little bit different, would you want a refund or would you be prepared to go along? I'd love to know.
If anything, we're trying to sell something completely different to a completely different audience. Because we'll turn up, albeit not in as much as our numbers, but we need more people who are not to turn up. And that's where you need the razzmatazz, that's where you need the DJs, that's where you need extra things on the side. That's where you need marketing. And, we fall down on that.
Which, again, we haven't got money to pay for marketing at the moment. But we already have an event that is scheduled. That is the marketing around Magic is already out there. If you say we're going to make it major Magic because we're going to change the format of it, there's not a huge amount you need to put in because it's already happening, and Sky will market it.
Calder versus the Rhubarb Triangles in the inaugural 4020 Magic 9s final. T-shirts coming shortly, says Tim. The design. We did, obviously the mighty pylons of Pyongyang, we did actually come up with another couple of teams. I say we, the people that really...
Nothing to do with us.
No, there was a Cumbrian one which was brilliant, but I don't know if we've ever released that. I don't know if we can. But
I have a feeling that Pyongyang might be getting a phone call from the World Cup.
They don't know they're not real yet. So.
If you could be representative of the whole of the nation, we've got a spot for you.
Mark has mentioned something which I was going to bring up, and he is now reminding me of it. So thanks, Mark. And it is the key again to selling things to people who don't know they want them. So the people who turn up at the 100 cricket, they don't know they want to watch cricket, but they've turned up. Every summer, every race course that, outside of the major meetings, outside of Royal Ascot, Cheltenham, whatever, the Grand National Festival, they have to find a gimmick to get people to come through the doors. And they have bands on.
Yeah.
And it's great because
Well, we used
loads
to
of
do
people turn up.
Doncaster,
Yeah.
not Doncaster,
Pontefract, yeah.
Pontefract.
They had the Rugby League there. Loads of people. I went to York a couple of years ago because Boyzone. I didn't want to see Boyzone. And the people there don't really know if the racing's any good or not because they're not there to see them. They'll have a bet while they're there and they'll enjoy the expensive food.
They'll have a burger and a beer.
But they're there to enjoy the whole atmosphere and then see the concert afterwards. And as Mark says, Haydock Park bring big name singers to their events, the advertisements galore, brings in big crowds. It's on the doorstep of every rugby ground, yet nobody has thought, how do we replicate it? Well, let's face it, every ground is not full at the moment. You could put a stage in one of the stands at Warrington or whatever.
I just don't think we've got the money, unless somebody like Simon Moran was going to say to one of his artists, you're playing my stadium as part of your current tour, you happen to have a new single out, it won't do you any harm. The game's on Sky. I just think what we need to do this season is get to the end of it.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that I thought last season was tough, particularly doing everything behind closed doors. But I think this year is harder. And we need to get to the end of this year without expending too much expense that isn't budgeted for. So to be getting bands to matches now is probably an expense that nobody can afford. But to turn Magic Weekend into something that, if let's just say 35,000 people turn up at Magic, which, each day, which is not beyond the realms of possibility, but you've made it into more of a Nines festival, and you tie it into that's the opening venue for the World Cup, so the people of the North East get a feel that actually this might be worth going to. And you could then say, well, if there's 35,000 people in the stadium, that's worth a band playing at. And you come to some agreement whereby someone's got a new single. Do they do singles anymore? I don't know.
I think they're still
Have Spandau Ballet got a new single out?
They'll probably re-release Gold if we win more medals.
But do you know what I mean? That
Spandau.
Yeah. Anyway, these ideas may or may not be being discussed, but I just think for the sake of the fans, we have to do something to preserve what's left of this season. And I would love to know if anybody has bought a ticket and would they be prepared to still honour it, because they actually might be more excited about seeing a one-off competition played over a weekend than league fixtures that are becoming harder and harder to contextualise the more we go on and lose them.
Just don't do the same things we've done before in terms of pre-match. Don't have people shouting on the pitch at us. Don't do that.
I think your point about the 100 is not what it is.
It's everything around it that isn't the cricket.
And it's an idea that a sport is looking at ways to be different, and we're not doing that.
And if it doesn't work, we'll go.
But that's the ideal reason to do it this year, because if it doesn't work, we did it this year because we're in a COVID straitjacket. If it didn't work, however, I don't know how you would decide what the metrics were that it worked or not.
Well, they've already decided that the hundreds are success, and it's only had less than a week, but it's the greatest thing that's ever happened in cricket. So they've got sponsors. They're all sponsored by crisps.
You see,
your favourite crisp brand, What would we be sponsored by?
Favourite tin of Ronseal each two.
Peas. Peas.
Doesn't matter. We might get a new sponsor on the back of it's something different.
Got to try and aim for something different. Got to try something, because what's working at the minute isn't. Britain's not working. Rugby League's not working.
You look at every business at the moment, whether it be a high street retail or a major department store, they are all thinking we can't just wait for it to return as it was. We've got to look to be slightly different, a bit more flexible. What events can we put on? What do we offer that makes people want to come in? And you cannot go back to just being what you were, because the market's not there.
Celebrity endorsement. We need some influencers off of Instagram and TikTok to get involved.
But again, I think you're going to do that with a new format. I think if you invite along the kind of people that you're talking about to the first rugby event they've ever been at,
say, it's great. Yeah.
You're not going to get much purchase out of inviting them to Wigan and Warrington and asking them to choose a team. But you take them to a festival where every 10 minutes there are different teams in front of them, and I like the colour of that team, or they're a good player, or she was brilliant, or whatever it might be. I think you would.
Although the names in the 100 are crap, that is official. But I'm
sure we could match that.
We're crap, I'm sure we could. Let us know what you think. Well, we'll pass them on. We won't pass them on to the RFL because they'll be listening anyway. They'll probably turn off.
The fact is, you've got the concept. I've got the event that it can be grafted onto. Yeah. Do we become shareholders?
Well, this is what happened at Proper Sport and Radio Yorkshire. We'd come up with ideas and then get the people who were good at them to invent them, like Championship League, Commonwealth League darts and stuff. It's the anniversary of the Fish and Chip Challenge, or was last week. Yeah, I think it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago we did that.
Again, if it's on YouTube, I would encourage you to watch.
Yeah, I think I should nick that video for when Proper Sport eventually disappears. But
greatest upset in sport.
Let's get players having Fish and Chip Challenge. Do something different because it is.
There's a title that needs defence.
It's all. We keep doing the same things over and over again. You know what's good about. One of the things that was good about Wembley, which will have gone unnoticed, was I don't know who the guy was who was doing the presenting at pitchside, but he didn't shout, he didn't scream, he didn't say boo the referee when he comes on. He was just a professional bloke doing his job. Couldn't hear him properly because you can't in the seats, in the press seats, but he seemed to be good. Seemed to be new. He wasn't a rugby league person I recognise. It was good. Loads of people getting involved on the World Cup. Here's Wonky Donkey. I know it's fancy, but if we could get all the Australian New Zealand players to pay for their second nations, we'd have the best World Cup ever on our hands.
There is that.
Here's Rich H. I really, really hope the World Cup goes ahead. Tonga, Samoa, Papua New Guinea and Fiji bringing stronger teams is mouth-watering. Tonga may just win it anyway. Imagine that for the sport. If it wasn't England, it wasn't Australia, it wasn't New Zealand, it was Tonga. That would make an impact. We've seen at the Olympics
well, I think the other thing about that is, and I know we continually compare ourselves to rugby union, we don't need to, but one of the areas that they have broken down in the international part, which they do so well, is that the All Blacks beat Tonga 100 and odd whatever the other week, and I think it came as a bit of a shock to rugby union that the actual best players in the South Pacific nations are playing rugby league. So you can imagine that on the back of their rugby union team being by 100 points, their rugby league team then going on to win a World Cup or maybe make the final. You know, they made the semis last time, so to get to play at Old Trafford, you know, that would have real resonance.
If Australia and New Zealand are highly barring us over, so be it. That was Jacob Rees-Mogg. No, it was Rich H. Teddy Ruxpin, to move on to a different topic, says, call me cynical, but the televised fixtures rarely seem to be postponed by COVID, but the others only go ahead if the clubs can be bothered. It's a mess at the minute, isn't it? People have asked us why are games in the Championship going ahead and not as many postponements. There are, but not as many. I guess we don't have an answer to this.
Part of the answer is something that Karen Morehouse said, that in a professional environment, the players are together a lot more. They're doing training that includes a lot closer contact on almost a daily basis. So if somebody brings it into the camp, because they're not living in bubbles, so it could be a child from school or a partner that's out at work or even going shopping. If somebody even is asymptomatic but brings it into a camp, the likelihood is most of the people in that camp are going to either get it or be close contacts of somebody who's got it. If you're a part-time team, you're only meeting a couple of times a week, and you can identify that somebody might be testing positive, you isolate them, and it doesn't necessarily affect the rest of that team. So you can see why the Super League teams are more vulnerable. What we can't do, because we can't afford it, is put those teams in bubbles.
We've had loads of comments on Facebook which I've missed, so apologies. Graham, don't be bullied by the Aussies. We've had to squash our season for the World Cup. They could delay their season by 2 weeks. They could.
I don't think there's the issue with the NRL is not delaying their season. It is that because of the collective bargaining agreement with the players have to have a certain amount of time off between seasons, and depending on your age, that is anything between 6 to 8 weeks. So what they're saying is, if some of their star names who are slightly older come back from a World Cup in mid-November, then have to quarantine for 2 weeks, then have to do their 6 or 8 weeks that's already proved. They'll be coming back as the pre-season friendlies start. So what? Let's be honest, if James Tedesco has to play in 3 pre-season trials, there's something wrong with the state of your club.
James says there'll be a number of Aussie and Kiwi players who will miss out on their last opportunity to play in a World Cup. The men in suits will be in immense pressure to go full throttle into reverse. Let's hope so.
Not only their last, for some who could even be, whose star is rising at the moment, could be their only one. They're in form, they'd be selected. I mean, let's take Nathan Cleary as an example. At the moment, arguably the most influential player in World Rugby League. His father is saying the World Cup could be postponed. If the World Cup goes ahead and Australia are part of it, Nathan Cleary will be in that Australian team. If it's postponed and he's out of form or injured, his father may be denying him the one and only chance he gets to play in a World Cup. That has got to be wrong.
The Nines thing is not going down well.
Oh well. But isn't that what grown-up adult debate is about?
Yeah. Chris says
it was your idea.
It was my idea, along with a number of rubbish ones. Fans in numbers would not travel to Newcastle for a gimmicky Nines competition. Personally, I wouldn't. It would be a TV at home event for me, I'm afraid. I mean, that's not a bad thing watching it on TV. John says that's why I say it won't work. All the supporters say lose because plenty wouldn't go to Newcastle for the Nines. That's fine, especially if you've already been sold.
How many do we think would go who are not Rugby League fans though, from the north of England? The north east and
all those orange shirt people from Cramlington.
I don't know. I mean, I think that's what you got to balance. But all I'm saying is this year, this is the time to do it.
Well, yeah, it does have all the hallmarks that, with the way things are going, it could possibly, fall apart. Sky will be awkward about a Nines tournament. I can see that coming, says Michael. Sky will be the problem.
I'm not sure Sky would, because they want content. I mean,
they would get a weekend of rugby, that is true.
And a guaranteed weekend of rugby, and something they could promote that's different, rather than tenterhooks before in the week leading up to it. That it's even going to. What happens if we only have 4 fixtures, a Magic Weekend, and Sky are going, well, you'll need to give us some money back because we can't put a rerun of the 2016 Grand Final on for the 54th time.
Grand Final gold again. Spoiler alert, Leeds win. Alex, very positive man here, says Rugby League is dying but the family refuses to call the doctor round. Oh, but ouch. James says 9 to 9s, that's what we're calling it. So I mean 9 minutes, last 9 minutes.
Brilliant.
Or 900 seconds. I don't know what that would be.
Oh, why not? The 100 is on that very.
Just as long as there's a countdown, because people like counting down.
9 and 9, absolutely.
People love counting down the clock. We've had a few questions. What's happened to Gale? Got Simbin yesterday for Feb. So I mean, I've not seen it, but I've read the tweets. Again, just club social media, RFL, just get a grip on it. It's time and time again, every week, players and clubs tweeting about referee decisions. Get them fined. Sort them out, Ralph. Look, Gale, though, what is a tin trademark? Has he been flogging Rhino's gear down Leeds Market?
I think
got an S missing off it or something.
It's the values and ethics of the team, the spirit of the Rhino, if you like. That Kevin Sinfield, Richard Agar and Jamie Jones Buchanan have been working extremely hard to build over a period of time when things weren't going right, and they felt that for whatever reason that ethos that gave them all the success prior to that had been erased in some way or eroded more than erased. So they've tried to rebuild it, and I think part of that is we go together as a unit, and again, rumours are rumours. And if it isn't, we're just starting. That Luke Gale objected to something that may have been said in a team meeting post a performance, where his contribution was looked at, and did it in such a way that was antithetical to whatever the spirit of the Rhinos is, and all being in it together and taking the criticism and accepting it and acknowledging it and moving forward as a unit, and perhaps didn't. So he was dropped for the game on Friday against Salford, and he's now had the captaincy taken off him. But Leeds, of course, I put out some pictures of him training this afternoon with a big smile on his face.
I mean, I'm very disappointed, obviously, that it's not because he had a fight with someone or something, as everyone's decided. Did you see any of the great rumours on social media?
Try not.
The best one was that he's trying to get a mortgage with someone who's not the Leeds and Holbeck Building Society. I don't know.
Leeds and Holbeck that day.
Or whatever they're called. I don't know what they're called.
I think it's just the Leeds Building Society.
He didn't drink a pint of Tetley's, he had a pint of something else.
No,
He didn't get his jewellery from that posh shop that's on the Leeds kits.
I think it's more to do with what they're trying to inculcate as a team, and that particular behaviour was outside of it. And the interesting thing will be with Aidan's season now coming, how that plays out in the future.
He's coming to Wakefield apparently.
Who will Luke get?
Yeah, that's what I read. I mean, I don't know.
Which of your overseas halfbacks will you be dropping?
I didn't even know Eddie Batty was coming until you told me last year, and I was still working for the club at that point. Mark says, Phil, 36 people are watching this on YouTube. What are you doing to promote this podcast? Nothing. Not marketing. We're just here. Plenty of people listen afterwards. Doesn't matter. It's not a competition. I mean, the charts are, but
the thing about it is, we're not making any money out of this. So it would, we have not and will not find a way to amortise it. I don't think in the near future. Therefore, any money we spent on it would be as a loss leader.
Got some balloons, look. It's promote the magazine.
But we love everybody who interacts with us. That's why we do it.
We were going to be at Bradford this evening.
We were going to be live from Bradford.
And I did email the RFL and say, can we come and do the show from Bradford? They didn't get back to me because obviously they cancelled Women's Super League for 2 weeks. I was looking forward to Leeds versus Saints as well, but no. So back in a couple of weeks. I did watch Wigan York last week, because obviously we didn't do the show on Monday, we did it on Tuesday. I was amused by Rhiannon Marshall being referred to as a prop throughout the commentary, which I thought she's a 6, she's a 7, she's a 13, she ain't a prop forward. But York beating Wigan 12-4. I think that's the only game I actually watched last week. I don't know if I should admit that or not. We're doing a Rugby League podcast, but...
Well, we'd love to talk about
all
the heroic Hull KR performance, but I've only seen 2 tries.
The Army beat the London Broncos 32-18. I hope they come out to the Ben Folds 5 zone. And Cornish Rebels drew with the Golden Ferns 18-0, first ever game in
big game,
Cornwall.
that first ever game in Cornwall for Wigan.
Up the Rebels. So yeah, it was a good game, that York Wigan game, because as we've said before, you put teams who are close together in ability, you'll get a good game. It's amazing how that works. Super League, let's start with round 13. Then again, we didn't see Catalans 32, Hull KR 30, and as I tweeted last week, full credit to Hull KR. There's integrity in play there, because they had their game postponed, but they got the call, went off out to France. I think they've got a quarantine now, they've come back.
But the amazing thing about that is at the same time that Australia and New Zealand said they wouldn't get on a plane, Hull KR said, we'll do anything to play a game, put us on a plane.
So they went, they didn't win.
They very nearly did.
But they had a go. Good on them. We didn't see it because it wasn't on the telly.
And again, there's something wrong with the sport when one of your premier matches in your elite competition you can't see highlights of.
No.
And you cannot imagine that the fans of Brighton and Aston Villa, if they played each other in the Premier League, wouldn't be able to see the highlights or the goals from that game, or it be being streamed somewhere. We're not Premier League football, I get that, but this is Super League. It was the only game in town and we couldn't even get the highlights of it.
Is the Super League show even on this week?
Yeah, I think I saw them filming it anyway on Friday night.
Good filmed it in Leeds on Saturday. I'm trying to get on the background. So that's our analysis of Catalan versus Hull KR. Well done, Hull KR. Well done, Catalans, who are now 13 from 14 for a win percentage of 82.96%. Until someone refuses to go welcome. Huddersfield versus Hull. I forgot to do my media tipping this week because I fell asleep on Thursday afternoon. I don't even know why. But I would have tipped Hull, so it didn't matter because Huddersfield won 40 points to 26, 4 tries from Jermaine McGilvey, who's now back in England contention.
And should have pulled out in the warm-up, but said he wanted it. Huddersfield's best performance of the season so far. Hull clearly suffering from not having played for 3 weeks, and we're going to see quite a bit of that where it's impossible to predict a form line because teams haven't played enough. But no, Huddersfield looked the kind of Huddersfield I think we thought we were going to get this year under Ian Watson.
Huddersfield back now, possibly.
Back.
They are one of 3 teams on 4 wins who are above the Lee Centurions, who of course didn't play this week.
And won't be playing on Wednesday either against.
But may have new investment according to someone from the BBC who tweeted last night.
And 2 new overseas players.
There you go. So maybe he's going to move them to Liverpool. I don't know.
Half the games in Cumbria, half in Liverpool.
Yeah. And we're going to buy Newcastle Knights. Wigan beat Wakefield 25-12. Chester out again now. That's how it's going on
Jackson
Facebook.
Hastings masterclass.
Yeah, Jamie's buggering off at the end of the season, isn't it? JP with a hat trick. So Wigan in front of their ancient and loyal.
3 in a row, so no longer in crisis.
Lam in. Yeah. I'm joking about Chester out, by the way, you know that. Tom Johnson is not leaving. What's really ridiculous is transfer rumours get made up and then get asked about at press conferences pre-match. Why? If something's obviously not real, people can tweet back in 6 months when he signed a 10-year deal with Warrington. Look, you were wrong. People just make things up on the internet and then they have to ask about it. No, you don't have to ask about it. It's just crap. Why do you keep falling for this rubbish? Why? Meanwhile, Leeds Rhinos are back as well. They beat Salford 38-16. Cruz leaving for England, they're saying, Phil. Leeds 50%.
Cruz leaving for Swaziland.
Swaziland. Maybe they're going to be coming in, yeah. Swati or whatever they're called these days. They're rebranded.
Salford, indisciplined team. It was an exact replica of the game between the two sides. Again, Salford down to 11 men. They have to sort out their discipline. But yeah, it's very hard to say anything about some of these games because it's so difficult to get an idea of how teams are training at the moment. The great thing for Leeds is Harry Newman is back, and clearly in the first half was by far the most impressive performer on the pitch. Second half, tired a little, totally understandable, been out for 10 months, and I think that clearly when he slowed down, but also Salford realised that they had to stop opportunities getting to his side of the field. But he's coming back, which is a massive positive. Matt Pryor re-signing for 2 years, big positive for Leeds.
Is he going to be the captain now?
He will, because again I think he sets the kind of lead that Richard Agar, Kevin Sinfield are looking for, and now that he has committed, you can build more stuff around him. Leeming has been in fine form since he came on the second half for the Combined Nations All-Stars, but he's been alternating between hooker and a half, and his influence is getting more and more. So some good signs, but for next year, I think, rather than this year.
That was Super League, because everything else was postponed. Alan says, Hall of Fame dinner on Sunday. Are you excited about that?
Leeds Rhinos Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
not the
Not the
Yes, the next 4 inductees will go in, taking it to 20. Yeah, very exciting. One of the highlight days of the year.
Just about the marketing of that. I was going to tell you, blaming everything on us.
Well, all I can tell you about that is the dinner is restricted to 450 people. There is a waiting list.
There you go.
So,
don't need to promote something that you can't sell, because that'd be a waste of money. Shout out to Barrow, says David.
well,
1,800 on Sunday to watch the game preceded by the ladies' game. Becoming a community hub, an October festival planned. What are Super League clubs doing? Well, that is a very good question, David.
what I would say as well is that there's less and less point previewing games, because as we sit here tonight, we don't even know if they're going to take place. But the 2 best games this weekend are not in Super League. Featherstone against Toulouse and Workington against Barrow. So I think the Championship and League One fixtures are far more exciting this weekend than anything Super League can throw.
Just back to the 100 thing, and it's not as if this is an original idea we haven't said before a million times. Double headers in Women's Super League and Men's Super League. It's just so simple. And I know you can't match them up with the fixtures because all the teams don't match up, but where possible, it should be done.
But in a nines tournament at Newcastle, you could have exact replica.
We need to make stars of people. We don't have any celebrities. We don't have anyone who anyone knows. And it doesn't matter whether they're men, women, wheelchair players, PDRL, LDRL, whatever. We just need to find some people who can resonate with the general public at large. More people will know, after this, the captain of the Northern Superchargers and the captain of the Leeds Rhinos, and she's the woman of steel. And they're married. Can't do the she's a keeper. I can't do it. I can't work out to figure it.
Just don't
But
say
she
it.
is.
Whatever you do, don't say it.
No. We've got to do something, because no one knows where any of these people are. Hence why it doesn't matter at the World Cup if Serbia play instead of Australia, because no one knows where any of the Serbians are.
Well, especially if Tom Trbojevic, who's the best player in Australia, comes over and playing Serbia, which is a possibility.
Before we get into the Championship and League One, here's Teddy Repspeak. What's happening with the Championship League One funding and structure in the light of the reduced Sky deal? Well, they're buggered, aren't they?
Well, talking to people who run clubs in the Championship and League One, they'd like to know the answer to that question too. They've been told that they may well hear something in August, but depends what the realignment is.
Does that mean next week or like in 5 weeks' time?
I don't know.
The realignment.
You can't run a business like that. No. You can't budget. You can't re-sign players. You can't make provision for signings or how you're going to move your business forward and put some money towards marketing, because the one thing when people say we need to do marketing, there is a cost. Well, you don't know what finance you've got coming in, it's very difficult to allocate some of that to marketing.
I'll tell you something that's free in a minute. Alan says, get rid of the GMB and create a new RLPA that markets the players. Well, I think it's the union's job necessarily to market the players, but where were they coming out talking about the World Cup and stuff? And we don't hear from them very often.
Well, one of the things that that swung the ball a little bit slightly back towards the Rugby League World Cup organisers when the RLPA made a statement that they can't countermand a decision that's made, but once they start saying we haven't been consulted, we think it's premature, we were involved in the negotiations, and we were happy for our players to be recommended to take seriously what was being proposed to them, but all of that was pulled out from under us. That's an RLPA that has some power. And I think there's more to come from the Australian RLPA.
Super League had some a graphical style created for social media for their clubs and for themselves at the start of last season, which you have seen most clubs using.
Robert Elston's big legacy.
And then some give up on using, which is ridiculous because it looks good when it's uniform. I've seen at least one Championship club using it now, which I don't know how they're able to use it because they shouldn't have access to it, but there you go. It took me ages to get access to it, and obviously I don't have access to it anymore. We don't have a unified approach to anything. We've said this before with the games on YouTube. When they were on, every single club in Super League, or actually in the Championship and League One if they weren't playing at the time, should have been promoting that, saying, look, there's live Super League on YouTube, because then people might watch it, or just send out the same old boring tweets they do every single day. There's no plan. There's no wide sport plan for our social media, outside of letting everyone get away with doing whatever they want to do, which is ridiculous. We need a plan. And yes, it will perhaps cost money, because you have to get someone in who knows what they're doing. The sad reality is you're leaving a lot of these things to people who are not
The other thing
marketers.
about a plan is that you'll only get a plan if you can have investors in that will fund the plan. The only way you'll get investors in to fund a plan is if they have a say in that plan. The only way you'll get them to have a say in that plan is if you change the governance to allow them to have a say in that plan. So the debate starts whether you follow what Shane Richardson's saying, whether you follow what Brian Noble's saying, whether you follow what Lindsay Hoyle's saying. It all starts with the fact that we need to have a different form of governance to attract the kind of things that we've been talking about, which is external investment. How much of the game are you prepared to give them? What do you get in exchange? I'm seeing at the moment, and I'm not a follower of rugby union in any way whatsoever, that the Pro 14 competition has been rebranded. So CVC Equity have come in, who own Formula One and various other things, invested a lot of money in rugby union, and what was Pro 14, which didn't really mean anything, is now the United Rugby.
Yes.
And they've added South African teams, so they've now got, I think it's five nations competing. Yeah. Well, that's all been funded by CVC wanting some kind of return on the investment, it being seen in more markets. But rugby union are getting pretty excited about that. But they couldn't do it themselves. They've had to allow in somebody from outside to say, if we put money in, this is what it's got to look like.
All it takes is
we have to do the same.
All it takes is someone at Super League to create a plan of action for the week, for the month, for the season, create the stuff and send it to the clubs to tweet out.
But I think it's bigger than that. It starts with what you want your sport to look like, and then from that, your collateral that goes with that is easier to put out there because everybody understands the message. I'm just not sure at the moment we're selling anything. We can't sell a Wigan home game for the first time with unrestricted fan numbers to more than 5,555 people. Doesn't matter what night of the week it's on. This whole thing about people will come because they've been denied something, that's a concern, and it's nothing to do with Wigan, because if that had been St Helens or Warrington or Hull, you'd have been equally worried whether you support the team or not that numbers weren't coming back.
Where's the showreel of Jermaine McGilvery's tries? Where's the exciting set-to-music video of Tom Johnston jumping over people, or Tommy Makinson, or some big hits, or whatever? Where are they? Again, we go back to those same tropes of here's someone coming back from a drugs ban and now they're redeemed. Here's someone who's been drink driving and now they're redeemed. They ain't going to sell people on coming to watch your sport. They don't sell Premier League football and say, this bloke was in prison once. It's frustrating because we don't have celebrities. And why don't we have celebrities? Well, let's go to the TV and say, oh, we've got this bloke for you. We're promoting him because he got done by the police or something. Great, wonderful. What kind of, and I know they're not, I'm going to use the phrase role model, and I know they don't sign up to be role models or whatever. Oh, we've got this player to come on your programme, he's just tweeted a lot of crap about the coronavirus being flu. What are we going to do? Everyone's an idiot. They're idiots. He's come up with these nines for me. He's already said it's rubbish. It's all talk and zero commitment, says Alan. Is that us or Rugby League in general? Elsewhere in the championship, I get distracted by things. So I wrote about sporting triangles this week. Batley Bulldogs 42, Newcastle Thunder 12. Another big win for the Bulldogs, who are the team to watch in the championship.
They look to me like they're going to get a playoff place as well, which is great news.
Reminiscent of this season when Tony wrote that book. Bradford lost to Featherstone in a game with Featherstone got all the decisions from the referee, according to Twitter. Yeah. Right.
Well, I have to say that's an astonishing result for Featherstone on the back of what was an absolutely emotionally draining Wembley experience. To go to Bradford and keep their 13-match unbeaten run going is a fabulous result for them. I think as well they were at least 12-0 down at one point.
And they've got no halfbacks now, Bradford, either, which is bad planning, isn't it? At the home of Rugby League, there was some Rugby League this week. Usually, I mean, I could have gone. If I'd have gone, that game would have been off. Halifax beat Sheffield 40 points to 28. No attendance given. This week, of course, it's the big Halifax-Bradford derby thing at the Shea.
Adam Tangata got 3 tries.
There you go. The former
Wasn't he
Wakefield
released
man.
by the way?
Yeah.
So at Wakefield,
yeah, we're going to sign Andrew Fafita.
presumably in front of some people from Wakefield who were there helping them host the game, he just showed them
stewards. Yeah.
what they were missing.
Yeah, I remember Andrew Fafita sign. That was good, wasn't it? Whitehaven beat Oldham 28-24.
But Oldham, dare we say, more competitive with a certain gentleman at the helm. 28-24. That's interesting. Oldham London this week as well. Mr McDermott trying to put the skids under his old club.
And York picking up a big win for them because obviously they haven't had the best of form before Wembley. 46-10. Not looking good for the Lions.
No, time I think is running out for the Lions. Bearing in mind it's 2 who are relegated, so they're 4 wins away from Dewsbury, who are 3rd from bottom. It's looking less and less likely that they will get 4 wins.
So in my made-up nines tournament, that's never going to happen. You would have
Greater Manchester
with Salford, Oldham, Swinton and Rochdale, because they're all from there. Wigan and Leigh could merge as well for it. Who controls the brand? Says Alan. Why are... It's like the cartoons on the start of the BBC and Sky. I don't know why they do that. They're a bit old hat now, aren't they? The BBC ones have been there forever. But everyone puts these big lumbering forwards. Teddy Ruxpin, Phil's book took the knee. Boo. Don't start to this. It's not the League Express letters page. In League One.
It's a book by Michael Holding, which is at the top of the bestsellers charts at the moment.
I like Michael Holding. He's great.
It's just a suggestion that you might want to read, as is The History of Schools Rugby League in Leeds by Steve Boothroyd, just out.
League One, which I haven't talked about yet. There were 3 games. So 2 got cancelled there, so that's a high percentage. Can't work it Barrow 40, Coventry 12. So Barrow continue their good run of A, being at the top of the table, and B, getting crowned.
But that's Coventry more competitive than they've been before against the team at the top of the table.
I mean, the assumption that if all the money is pulled out of League One stroke the Championship, then the clubs like Coventry would fail is a misnomer, because they're obviously run well and aren't reliant on spending lots of money on players, which is a credit to them and the scholars and so on and so forth, because they're not chasing things that aren't there. Speaking of the scholars, they won the big battle against West Wales 46-30.
But only very late on. 28-0 up, got back to 28-20, and then Scholars got a couple of late tries.
So they're obviously improving, aren't they? It's, you don't know what to say about them. They're giving it a go or something. I don't know. And a draw at
a dramatic draw.
Dramatic
A
draw.
dramatic last second draw.
Hunslet 20, Keithley Cougars 20.
Hunslet with their new coach.
Yes, Alan Kilshaw, ex of Rochdale Hornets. And a second draw for Hunslet this season. And some exciting games. 714 at Hunslet. Better than probably made up crowds in the Championship or whatever.
Big game between Doncaster and Hunslet this week as well in League One, because Hunslet now again are going to have to almost win most of their remaining games if they really want to challenge in the playoffs. They might sneak into them, but they really want to be going in better form. They can beat a team that's above them, then that will help. I was
going to say, why are these games all over the place, kick-off wise, on Sunday? But I'm guessing Doncaster will play just before Sheffield play York, won't they? Because they're playing at the.
I think it's probably to do with none of them being on our league.
No. What about our league? It was, some bits were good, some bits were not so good. But I don't think we'd say anything more, because we'll get people into trouble ridiculously. It shows you how bonkers this sport is. But it's frustrating sometimes, because I'd love to say some things, but I can't. It's annoying. No Super League on TV on Sunday, says Graham. On Saturday, says Graham. But the 100 cricket on 3 channels. It was on Sky 1, Sky Main Event, and Sky 100. I think they were showing 2 different games at once at one point.
I mean, I get why there is some dispute about filming Catalan games. Who's going to pay for it? Why should we expect Bernard Gouache all the time to put his hand in his pocket when he's done a fantastic job just to keep Catalan going? But you would have thought the competition would have hired somebody to film it so that they could at least show highlights. And I know there will be highlights because we've seen a couple of the tries. I think already I've seen the Adam Quinlan try. So why is it already 2 days after that game and I haven't seen a package?
Also mentions the lack of NRL on, and that's the fault of the NRL. They want you to watch NRL, so that's why there's only 2 games on Sky.
I think it's 3 games a week.
3 games.
That's what you get.
It's like the Olympics. Blame the rights holders, not the broadcaster. Toulouse deserve to be promoted, having to do it the hard way all the way from home, says Graham. And that people are going to kick off at the end of the season.
Well, that question has been asked of the man who was supposedly in charge of the Super League competition. Although I think he was seen in a box supporting one of the teams that he's supposed to have stepped down from. And he said, I've not heard that there's going to be any alteration. But
prefer bring more away. People tweeting me about the Yorkshire thing. Liam says our league was amazing for fans overseas. Now it's dead. And
it seems to have just gone from one extreme to the other.
Is it a cost thing?
I don't know.
Probably in some cases.
But again, it goes back to your point about what is the principle of how you promote the game. It was fantastic for those who couldn't get to games because the coronavirus prevented them from so doing. But once that part of its being was no longer relevant, to go from that to nothing is...
I'm not saying Featherstone should, but could they go to Sky this week and say, right, you've got the rights to the Championship, you're not showing a game at 3 o'clock, you're showing one at 7:30, can we put our game on YouTube for it? Because Fev will do that, because they did that with their pre-season games, which our league paid and charged for, and they put theirs on free. And I'm not saying Featherstone should. I think if Featherstone wants to, they should be allowed to charge people to watch it, because that's a game where people would perhaps
I also think there's a case for saying if another game goes down that was going to be a televised game, if there's any chance of Featherstone to lose playing in that pre-arranged slot, then that's a game that they should look at covering rather than
It would be
a different Super League.
it would be good for the Rugby Football League, etc., to pick out some of these fixtures now, stick them through on YouTube. And I know that clubs will say, "Oh, people are going to come and watch us, and we're going to lose money for beer." Think about the big picture for next season, when no one is going to watch any of your games because you've got no money, because the Sky deal is for less, and the Super League clubs aren't going to give you any money because they don't want to give you any. Because what do you provide them with?
Players.
They don't care about that. We've got an elite academy, I don't know. They've got to find a way now of selling themselves to broadcasters for the future. Forget about Channel 4, because the fact they show Formula 1, that's a worldwide sport, I've noticed that. And 150,000 at Silverstone.
They did.
There's not, let me just check. No, there wasn't 150,000 at Bradford, even though we know it holds it. It's falling down again.
Did you bang the table?
I might have done. Apologies to Ian if I have banged the table and made any noise today. Mainly speaking. So there wasn't 150,000 at Odsal. Iconic Odsal, sorry.
I banged it.
Yeah, it's not so that's that. And International Rugby Union and the European, whatever it's called, that's like an international thing. And they sell adverts from Land Rovers and stuff, I think. That's what Sky usually do. They sell investment banks and Land Rovers, where, what's your base? We are what we are. So forget that. We've got to look at something where, perhaps it's going to be where we do sell subscriptions ourselves, which brings a whole range of other problems, because you've then got to have a quality threshold as to your coverage. But we've got to find something, because what are we going to do? They're going to have no coverage at all. You know, local radio
it's not even about the remainder of the current television deal. We should now be putting things in place that enable us to get the following television deal. And that's why I think a nines concept developed now and sold on in 2 years' time. I think you do have to go down that road.
As we said last week, it doesn't matter how entertaining the championship is or how competitive it is. It's about interest. We know rugby union is one of the most complicated sports on earth, and no one knows the rules in scrums and stuff. But it still gets massive media coverage because they can do hype well, and because they've sold it for a long, long time. And all the other...
And they've got enough money to produce a package themselves that a Channel 4 or Channel 5 will take.
You know,
I
bring up YouTube again. You know, here we are on YouTube to an audience of 36 people.
Are we? That many?
And however many people watch on Facebook, and the thousands, because it's more than 1,000 who listen to the podcast every week. But where is the output? Where is the organic? Where is the love? Women's Super League, we love it. Where is the organic output being created by people? And this is where, and I know I've seen the demographics of our audience, Phil. I need to find a new audience. Where are the YouTubers doing rugby league based channels? There are millions of people who do videos wandering around Blackpool and get thousands of views a week, a day. Where are our people doing rugby league content? I know Red V have successful content based on St Helens, but where are the wider rugby league content? Everyone's got a podcast these days, but where are the videos? Where is the snappy content on YouTube? People having an argument or something. Where is it? Because that's the future, not Free Sports or Premier Sport 2 with 1,000 people subscribing to watch Halifax versus whoever. We've got to create a new audience. Be it nines, be it this, be it that. David says Barrow is seeking permission to finance the broadcasting of the Workington game from the RFL according to the channel and the club Facebook page. Good luck to Barrow. They seem to be very progressive in these things. And people will watch it, and which will be good for their sponsors and good for... people will still go because people like going to watch Barrow because they go early, they watch the women's game, they're getting free, they drink beer, they enjoy it. That's clever. That's smart. That's the other thing about the 100 is there are lots of cheap tickets. And it's different selling cheap tickets for a club game than an international or a cup final, and it's also different selling cheap tickets for.
It's only a
game
very small
rather-
window in the
yes.
season, so
rather than
if you
a season
cheapen your season ticket
Yes.
across the whole of the season, rather than you pay for a certain number of events and you get a build-up of audience, that those ticket prices then eventually go up.
Going back to your media point, says Liam, the RFL pushed James Lockwood's personal story. Need to see more of that with more players. People like a story to follow. I mean, that's a more positive end of that kind of story. It's not one I buy into because I'm not particularly interested in that kind of thing. But I can see why that.
It's human interest.
I don't have a problem with those because they are positive stories. It's when we get the whole here's someone coming back from something bad. It's a bit. What we're going to do next time someone's banned for racism, we're going to make a big thing about when they come back. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, and we do it all the time. Barrow are thinking outside the box, as they would say on The Apprentice.
It's a survival mode. They know that their funding is going to be cut. They don't know to what level. They're hoping to get promoted. If they were in the Championship, there's less likelihood of the competition they're currently in being, not there in 2 years' time. Therefore, they are taking matters into their own hands before the inevitable happens and somebody says, "You've got no money, what are you going to do now?" And they go, "Well, we've got no money, we can't exist." So no, full credit to them. And I think if you were to say there is a Nines tournament going on in Newcastle and Barrow can lead the combined Cumbrian side, they would. Make it happen. I know.
Liam says under 16s are free at Fair to Lose on Sunday.
Brilliant.
As you can get in. Clubs just need
That's
to.
going to be one hell of a game.
Yeah. Clubs just need to do more, and it's
Yorkshire Day as well.
Oh yeah. Oh god.
What?
Because
Just imagine how high they'll be in the medals table when Yorkshire Day comes.
We've gone down the charts. We're down to 19th in the Apple Podcast Great Britain Rugby all-time chart list, but we have gone up in America to 56. Oh, there's 42. Sorry. Oh no, we're 11 in the all-time podcast. That's good.
New markets.
Yeah.
We're big in America.
Just seeing how we do.
Wait until we have some guests on in a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah.
That'll blow the market.
Guests
in America.
Guests coming on the show, so you don't have to listen to us just talking
Live
rubbish.
guests.
Yeah, I mean now people can come in and come and do stuff. So my message is to YouTubers, they're not watching this, but all our audience, they must know some young people. Maybe you've got kids. Tell them to do a
TikTok.
yeah, tell them to do something good. And why aren't there rugby players on TikTok doing wacky things? And I don't know how the algorithm works. Why don't they do something?
I don't even know what TikTok.
Where are they?
I know I had to change my watch battery this week because I didn't have any TikTok.
Ben Watson, former England goalkeeper, I think he's at Watford, has his own YouTube channel where he sticks a camera in the goal so you can watch him doing his thing. Just things like that. Have the players talk about their... I've long been... and this I said this to someone earlier in the year, and it's stealing from professional wrestling, so I'm stealing from something completely ridiculous now. But a lot of the people there, they make their money obviously from doing their thing, but also from selling merchandise and stuff. And to do that, they have to make themselves into personalities. Our idea of personality is, people who are birds, but they create vlogs showing you their life behind the scenes. People watch it, and then it turns into some kind of weird drama things they've invented in comedy. But if the players give more of an insight into what they do, within reason, not going back to the town hall tavern or whatever. But that's the way of humanising these people in just letting you into their lives. Let's see what they get up to with having to have all these COVID tests and know how many sacrifices or whatever they're making to be professionals. Thanks, Lee. I'm glad I didn't know that. I'm just throwing ideas out. Just throw ideas out. People might listen. They might not. I don't know. But if you're on social media, stop blaming referees. Stop saying decisions were wrong and stuff. Because it's amateur hour. I'd love to see clubs fighting for it. I know that sounds very harsh, but it's almost as if everything's lawless at the minute, and you can do whatever you want. Johnny Lawless. You can just do whatever you want, and no one seems to take any responsibility or any blame. And again, if we all tweeted Sam Tompkins and said, you're crap, you dropped the ball, he'd be straight off having a monos. Don't do that, by the way. I'm not picking on Sam Tompkins, he picked on the referee. It's easier. Clubs and players should realise their responsibility, and that as soon as they criticise a referee, it gives fair game to morons on social media to do the same. Whether the decision's right or wrong, or you agree with it or not, you're opening up that Pandora's box. But there you go. Is there anything else to talk about? I know I've kind of dominated things today.
I'd just like to pay tribute to Ellenbridge Eagles.
It's a very nice shirt. It's got a 40 on it.
40th anniversary.
Where were they?
They're in Surrey. And one of the greatest people in Rugby League, Kevin Rudd, is one of their coaches for them.
See the guy in the kilt?
He was. One of the absolute all-time stalwarts of developing Rugby League. Founded the European Federation, and he's just an all-round bon earth. So the least we can do is promote the work he's doing at Ellenbridge.
Rugby League in Surrey, which of course gave us a grand final winning try scorer.
There you go.
All those years ago. So the future, it's in Guildford. That's the future.
Or even Ellenbridge.
Oh, where's that near?
Surrey.
In Surrey.
We'll ask Danny Ward.
Where's Johnny Woodell when you need him? So are we done? What do you think?
We probably are, unless there's any other comments on
I think I'll have a last check. I mean, I'm hoping the Women's Super League comes back bigger and brighter than ever when it does come back.
I think it will, because it's split into the top 5 and bottom 5, isn't it? So.
Nicholas says we should have the nines at Cardiff under the roof early season.
I just think we need to do something in September this year, pretty quickly.
I mean, the new idea, the one for next year, with the merged teams, that's like the 100 but not. I'll write it down on a bit of paper, send it into the archive.
Back of a fact packet.
The Netherlands were one of 2 international teams to win in 2020. Saw Mark Aston getting involved with the Dutch team. Untapped market for sure, plus no more hilly pitches. It's true.
Tulips in the dressing room.
Flatter than an ironing board. So yeah, enjoy the Rugby League this weekend. Apparently this game's on Monday, so we might not be here on Monday, because we clash with them. So we'll be back at some undetermined point in the future. But as we always say, it doesn't matter when we're on. You either watch us or you don't, but you listen to the podcast, and that's the most important thing, I think. But we do enjoy sitting here and talking to you.
We do.
So,
and we're grateful for your company.
Yeah, and if you've been pinged, even better, you can just watch the programme over and over again. How is the legend? Is he well? Was he on to you earlier, did you say?
He was, yes. He was on to me earlier. He's, he did an event at East Leeds on Saturday night where he was talking to them at a fundraising dinner. I think he enjoyed that. So he did Wembley the week before. He'll be in the Hall of Fame on this Sunday.
He's on John Davison's podcast last week.
He was on John.
So we don't know how he got on.
He's okay.
Raconteur and wit. Well, he is. He'll be back soon enough.
As soon as he's ready, he's back.
So there you go. That's it. That's all the Rugby League this week. There is nothing happening. The World Cup will happen. The Nines tournament we've made up
Won't
happen. Simon Johnson saying things like Ralph McCann, that will continue to happen.
And hopefully there'll be some games.
Yes.
Because they may well have lost another one while we've been on air.
But there might have been. I don't seem to get emails from Super League at the minute.
I don't think they're putting out a lot of emails.
Oh, that's okay then.
Let's try and hide.
I always worry I've upset.
Well, you probably have,
but
but that's not why you're not getting emails.
No. But last week was our 200th since the move. Wow. So this is episode 202. Although some of those include like putting the predictions out as an extra podcast, which was kind of cheap. But
they said it would never, like the magazine. They said it would never last.
I thought we could change the numbers around. In 2 weeks' time, we should put like 204.
Excellent.
The 2004 special.
It should be like Faulty Towns. Every week we have something different.
Yeah.
See if anybody knows.
How did they get away with that in the 70s? Did people not know that was a swear word then? Well, obviously I didn't know. I wasn't here in the 70s, but I remember watching Blackadder and stuff. How did they get away with that? Didn't know any of the jokes, that's why. So we'll be back next week, some point in the future. Buy the magazine. It is there. Where? Oh, I can't do it. It's there. It's out now in all good newsagents and online. and we'll see.